Why did they look at her like that? Like she had walked into the wrong place. Like she didn't belong. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the Army recruitment office, a cold, relentless buzz that seemed to mock the pounding of Sarah's heart. She pushed through the glass doors with more force than she intended, the small brass bell above the frame chiming with an inappropriately cheerful note. It was the sound you might expect in a diner or bookstore. Not here. Not when every step she took felt like stepping further away from the life she had always known. The library badge still clung crooked to her cardigan. Sarah C. Reference Specialist. That name tag had been her world until now, neatly tucked between dusty shelves and catalog drawers. A world where order could be restored with a decimal system and quiet ruled like a law. But the badge felt like a lie now. In her hand, heavier than the books she once carried, heavier than the silence of a library at closing time, was a folded ribbon of purple and bronze. The Purple Heart. Her brother, fresh from the funeral home, still carrying the scent of grief. She clutched it like armor, as though that single medal could shield her from the stares of the three men in the office: Sergeant, who looked up from paperwork; Staff Sergeant Williams, pausing mid-keystroke at his computer; Corporal Jackson, his sandwich hovering just inches from his mouth. At first glance, Sarah did not look like someone they would expect. 5'3", a little over 100 pounds, wire-rimmed glasses that kept slipping down her nose, her black hair tied in a no-nonsense ponytail. She looked more like a graduate student late for seminar than a soldier in waiting. But her eyes told a different story. Smiled his recruiter's smile, polished from years of guiding nervous teenagers toward brochures and sign-up sheets. "Can I help you, miss? Looking for information on college programs." Sarah stepped closer, measured steps. The squeak of her sneakers echoed too loud in the quiet room. "I want to enlist," she said. Blinked but recovered quickly, reaching for the pamphlets. "Excellent. We've got great opportunities for someone with your background: communications, intelligence, logistics. The Army needs." The metal struck the desk with a crack, silencing him. It spun once, twice, settled with its purple ribbon stark against gray metal. "My brother died because his spotter missed a target at 800 yards, Sarah said, her voice sharper than any brochure, cutting through the room's casual atmosphere. Her knuckles tightened against her purse strap. "I won't." The hum of the air conditioner filled the silence that followed. Williams closed his laptop. Jackson set down his sandwich. Practiced smile faltered. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "I'm sorry for your loss, but maybe intelligence work or logistics. I want sniper training." The words landed flat, cold, as if she had simply asked to renew a library card. Jackson snorted, quickly covering it with a cough when shot him a look. Williams leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, studying her like some strange exhibit. "Miss," said, reading the name off her crooked badge, "Sniper School is the most demanding program we have, physically, mentally. The washout rate is—" 85%, she interrupted. "I know." They weren't expecting her to know that, but she had read everything: manuals, reports, training accounts. She knew the odds, and she knew her brother had trusted odds once, trusted them and died for it. She reached into her purse again, this time laying down an old photograph. A young girl no older than 12 standing with a rifle almost taller than herself. Beside her, an elderly Asian man in faded fatigues, his posture unmistakable, military, experienced, his hand on her shoulder. "My grandfather taught me," she said quietly. "By 12, I could hit a dime at 200 yards. By 16, I was making shots he called impossible. He said gifts like mine should stay hidden until they're needed." Studied the photo, the stance of the old man, the discipline etched in every line of his posture. There was no mistaking it. This wasn't some weekend hunter's pride. This was a soldier's legacy. But William scoffed. "Hunting rabbits in Oregon isn't combat, ma'am. Stress, pressure, fear. That's a different animal. Sarah didn't flinch. My brother's name was Staff Sergeant David, 75th Ranger Regiment. He died 3 weeks ago in Afghanistan. His spotter missed. The sniper didn't. 3 men died before air support even had a chance. I read the after-action report. Wind speed, temperature, elevation. I've made that shot, in worse conditions, at 15. Silence again, the kind of silence that weighs on a room. Swallowed hard. He had seen recruits walk in with bravado, with false confidence, with fantasy. But there was nothing performative about Sarah. She wasn't bragging. She was stating facts. Cold, heavy facts. Even if what you're saying is true, he began slowly, the physical requirements. I'll meet them, I'll exceed them, because my brother died believing the Army's best was good enough. Her gaze was steady, her voice unwavering. I'm here to prove it was. She left the medal and the photograph on his desk. When do I start? The Georgia sun burned mercilessly on the parade ground at Fort Benning. 43 recruits stepped off the bus, each carrying duffel bags, each sizing up the others. Farm boys with arms like tree trunks, athletes looking for discipline, kids with nowhere else to go. And Sarah, clutching a paperback copy of Advanced Ballistics like a lifeline. The others noticed her immediately. The librarian among warriors, the smallest body in a sea of muscle and swagger. And then Sergeant Murphy appeared. A storm in human form. Listen up, maggots. His voice cracked like thunder before his boots even hit the asphalt. He stalked down the line of recruits, eyes sharp, jaw set like iron. He stopped in front of her. Well, 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 he said, a grin crawling across his weathered face. What do we have here? Did somebody's little sister get lost on her way to summer camp? Snickers rippled through the formation. Private, no relation to the recruiter, leaned toward his buddy. $20 says she's crying by lunch. Murphy circled her like a predator. He barked, reading her name tape. You the librarian thinks she's gonna be a sniper. Yes, drill sergeant. Her voice was steady, her hands were not. You know what we call people like you. His voice rose, sharp enough to slice through bone. Dead weight. You're gonna get real soldiers killed with your fantasy nonsense. No, drill sergeant. Drop and give me 50. She hit the ground, push-ups, one after another. Her form solid but her body small. By 30, her arms trembled. By 40, sweat dripped onto the concrete. At 47, she broke. Pathetic, Murphy roared. Can't even handle 50, and you think you can handle a rifle in combat. You'll be gone before we even finish the week. Sarah staggered to her feet, her face burning, her eyes defiant. I'll get stronger, drill sergeant. Murphy sneered, you'll get gone. The other recruits laughed, relieved it wasn't them under fire. Sarah felt every stare, every whisper in the chow hall that night. She thinks she's gonna be a sniper, someone muttered. My little sister could outshoot her. Political correctness in combat units, people are gonna die. She ate in silence, bite after bite, chewing determination into every swallow. She woke an hour before the others the next morning, doing push-ups in the latrine, using her duffel bag as makeshift weights. They laughed, they doubted, they dismissed. But she was patient, patient like her grandfather taught her. Patient like a sniper waiting for the perfect shot. And though Murphy didn't know it yet, his cruelty was forging something sharper than he could break. Because Sarah wasn't here to be liked. She wasn't here to be accepted. She was here to become the rifle. Why was everyone betting against her? Because they couldn't imagine she might be telling the truth. Because the idea of a librarian outshooting farm boys and football players was ridiculous. But Sarah didn't argue. She let them talk, she let them laugh, and she waited. The first 3 weeks of training had been relentless. Sergeant Murphy never missed a chance to single her out. Extra push-ups, extra laps, extra humiliation. She carried the company guidon on runs, the heavy flag dragging in her weakening grip, while taller recruits surged ahead. She scrubbed floors until her hands blistered, polished boots until she could see her face in the leather, hauled equipment until her shoulders screamed. Every stumble brought jeers, every pause ridicule. Dead weight. Won't last a week. Bet she's crying herself to sleep. Sarah did cry sometimes, but never where they could see. Alone in the barracks, she let silent tears fall into her pillow. Then she woke before dawn, pushed herself harder, lifted her duffel like it was iron, ran in the shadows while the others slept. Her body bent, but it did not break. And then came the rifle range. The recruits lined up, rifles slung, chatter buzzing about the betting pool. More than $200 wagered that Sarah would embarrass herself spectacularly. Murphy practically salivated at the chance. "All right, maggots," he bellowed. "Time to see which of you can actually shoot and which of you have been lying on your paperwork." His eyes found Sarah. "Front and center. Let's get this over with so the real soldiers can take their turns." She stepped forward. The M16 felt heavier than her grandfather's rifles, but familiar enough. Metal, wood, scope, breath. The ingredients never changed. "Target distance is 300 yards, Staff Sergeant Torres announced, acting as range safety officer. 5 rounds, prone position, take your time." Sarah lay flat, cheek against the stock, breathing steady. She blocked out the whispers, the laughter. She remembered Oregon woods, the smell of pine, her grandfather's voice. "Breathe, little ghost. Let the rifle become you." Her finger squeezed. The shot cracked. Through the spotting scope, Torres saw the bullet strike dead center. "Good shot," he called. "Beginner's luck." Sarah didn't answer. She loaded again. Second shot, same hole. Third shot, same. Fourth, fifth. A one-hole group. The range went silent. Torres keyed his radio. "Pit, confirm target 12. The reply came back, tinny and stunned. "Tower, target 12 shows 5 rounds, all X-ring, grouping less than half an inch." The recruits crowded the scope, jaws slack. Murphy's face reddened. "Lucky shots. Anybody can get lucky once." Sarah met his glare calmly. "Would you like me to do it again, drill sergeant?" The challenge hung in the air. Murphy hesitated, but his pride couldn't refuse. "Damn right, do it again." She reloaded. No hesitation this time. 5 shots in rapid succession, each falling into the same impossibly tight group. Torres whispered under his breath, "Jesus Christ." Then louder into the radio, "Pit, confirm target 12, second string." "Confirmed. 5 more X-ring, grouping a quarter inch. I've never seen anything like it." Even Williams, the loudest doubter, looked pale. "That's impossible," he murmured. Murphy walked to the scope, peered downrange, and straightened slowly. His face revealed nothing, but his silence said everything. Sarah stood, cleared her rifle, slung it with ease. "My grandfather taught me, drill sergeant. He said some people are born to do certain things. I was born to do this." The betting pool quietly dissolved that day. No one wanted to risk money against her anymore, but the whispers didn't stop. If anything, they grew louder. Because now, Sarah wasn't just a joke. She was a problem. The night exercise came in the 3rd week. A simple patrol, they said. Nothing complicated. Just practice moving under cover of darkness with night vision goggles. But darkness was Sarah's oldest companion. She moved through the Georgia pines like a shadow, slipping between branches while larger recruits stumbled and cursed. The green glow of the goggles distorted everything, but her grandfather had taught her to read the night without technology, to see the subtle shift of shadow, the whisper of movement, the difference between forest stillness and a man holding his breath. Behind her, Williams crashed like a wounded animal. "Slow down," whispered Martinez, their squad leader. "We're supposed to stay together." Sarah froze, hand raised, halt. She had seen it. A silhouette 200 yards out, crouched behind a fallen log, barely visible, invisible to the others. Alpha Squad, Murphy's voice crackled over the radio. Hostiles in your sector. Neutralize the threat or your team fails. The recruits scrambled, fumbling with goggles, rifles, nerves. Williams hissed, I can't see anything. Where the hell? Sarah's voice was a whisper. 3 targets, 2 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11:30, 200, 150, 250. Where? Martinez squinted, confused. Sarah didn't wait. 3 shots, 3 beeps from the laser training system. 3 instructors eliminated before the others even found their scopes. The radio exploded with chatter. All targets neutralized. How the hell did she see them? Murphy's voice cut through. Front and center now. 20 minutes later, Sarah stood in Murphy's office, night vision goggles still hanging around her neck. He paced behind his desk like a caged animal. Sit down. I prefer to stand, drill sergeant. That wasn't a request. She sat. He dropped a thick folder onto the desk, her name printed across the tab, inside papers and photographs. He pulled one out, the same photograph she had shown, only this copy was sharper, clearer. In the background, targets with bullet holes clustered impossibly tight. I did some digging, Murphy said, his voice low. Your grandfather, Korean War, 1st Marine Division Reservoir. Sarah's eyes flickered, the only crack in her calm mask. What's interesting, Murphy continued, is that most of his record is blacked out, classified, heavy redactions, the kind of redactions that mean someone doesn't want the truth coming out. He slid the photo closer. Friends of mine remember a sniper in Korea who made shots that shouldn't have been possible. They called him Ghost Walker, said he could move through enemy lines like he didn't exist. Tell me, what did he teach you? Memories rose unbidden. Oregon woods, a rifle taller than her grandfather's weathered hands guiding her own. Breathe, little ghost. The rifle is not a weapon. It is an extension of your will. Become one with it. Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. He taught me everything. By 12, I was hitting distances that shouldn't have been possible. By 15, I was making shots that grown men failed. He made me promise never to tell anyone, said the world wasn't ready, said someday I'd understand why. Murphy leaned back, folding his arms, studying her. He had broken 1,000 recruits in his time. He had seen arrogance, delusion, fantasy. But Sarah was none of those things. Show me, he said suddenly. Drill sergeant. Tomorrow night, just you and me. No excuses. I want to see what your grandfather really taught you. The next night, under moonlight, Murphy led her to a remote section of the range. Targets scattered at distances from 300 to 800 yards, some hidden, some angled, some nearly invisible. No night vision, Murphy said, handing her an M24 sniper rifle. No laser rangefinder, just you, the rifle, and whatever your grandfather drilled into you. Sarah lay prone, steady, breathing in rhythm. Target at 300 behind the log, she whispered. Murphy frowned. I don't see. Ping, metal rang out. The target he couldn't even spot had fallen. 500, left of the oak. Ping. 800, hilltop. Ping. Murphy's mouth went dry. He'd trained snipers for years, seen talent that stunned him. But this wasn't just talent. This was something beyond training. How many targets out there I don't know about? He asked. 12, Sarah replied calmly, reloading. Grandpa always said the most dangerous enemy is the one you don't see. For an hour she worked methodically, dismantling the range target by target. Each shot was deliberate, surgical. Each hit a revelation. By the time she slung the rifle and stood, Murphy understood something he had never admitted before. Sarah wasn't just a recruit. She was an inheritance. A legacy. Something the Army wasn't prepared for. And for the first time, the drill sergeant who lived to break spirits felt a chill crawl up his spine. Because he had just realized Sarah was unbreakable. How do you explain the impossible? How do you make men believe what their own eyes can't deny? The rifle range had fallen into silence after Sarah's demonstration. 43 recruits stood stunned, their whispers dying in their throats. 5 bullets, 5 holes, all in the same space. Then 5 more. An even group, so precise that even the pit crew couldn't believe it. They'd laughed before, none of them laughed now. Staff Sergeant Torres still had his eye glued to the spotting scope, muttering under his breath. Jesus Christ! He keyed his radio again. Pit, confirm target 12. Second string. Tower, confirm. All 5 rounds, X-ring. Groups less than a quarter inch. Silence. The kind of silence that stretched long enough to feel heavy. The kind that changed the way people looked at you. Sarah calmly cleared her weapon, laying it down like it was nothing more than routine. It wasn't routine. It was the kind of shooting that broke reality. Murphy's face was unreadable, but something behind his eyes shifted. He tried to make her quit, tried to humiliate her until she broke. But humiliation doesn't work when your bullets carve truth into steel. He walked over to Torres. Let me see. Torres stepped aside. Murphy looked downrange, studied the target for a long moment, then stepped back. His swagger was gone. He said finally, his voice low, "Where the hell did you learn to shoot like that?" Sarah slung her rifle over her shoulder with practiced ease. She didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't gloat. "My grandfather taught me, drill sergeant." The recruits stared. None dared whisper, none dared move. Murphy turned on his heel and stormed off. The range was over for the day, but something else had just begun. That night the whispers followed her through the barracks, not mocking anymore, not jokes, curiosity, fear. "Did you see that? She's not normal. $10 says she's some kind of plant." Sarah ignored them. She lay on her bunk, staring at the ceiling, hearing her grandfather's voice from years ago. "Breathe, little ghost. The rifle is not a weapon. It is you, and you are it. If you do not believe that, no bullet will ever go where it's meant to." She closed her eyes, steadying her heart. The world wanted her to break. She wasn't going to. The night training exercise came a week later. A routine drill, or so they were told. Moving silently through the Georgia pine forest with night vision goggles, learning communication and coordination. Nothing extraordinary. But the forest told Sarah otherwise. She moved through the underbrush like she belonged there. Her smaller frame slipped through gaps that snagged the others. The goggles felt clumsy, green shadows replacing the natural darkness she had learned to read as a child. But she adapted. Behind her, Private Williams crashed like a wounded elephant, muttering curses as thorns caught his gear. "Slow down," whispered Private Martinez, the squad leader. "We're supposed to stay together." But Sarah froze. Her hand went up, halt. She had seen it, just a flicker, a silhouette where no silhouette should be. 200 yards ahead, behind a fallen log. The radio crackled with Murphy's voice. "Alpha Squad, you have hostiles in your sector. Neutralize the threat or your team fails." The recruits fumbled, confused. None of them could see what she saw. "I can't see anything," Williams hissed, frustration breaking his whisper. Sarah scanned again, one behind the log, another crouched by a tree to the left, a third higher ground, 3 targets. "3," she whispered. 2 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11:30. Martinez squinted, shaking his head. "Where?" Sarah didn't wait. She raised her rifle and fired 3 times in rapid succession. Electronic beeps echoed through the forest. 3 confirmed hits. The radio erupted with static and shock. "All targets neutralized. Alpha Squad, how the hell?" Murphy's voice cut in. "Front and center now." 20 minutes later, Sarah stood at attention in Murphy's office. Her night vision goggles still hung from her helmet strap. Sweat clung to her skin, but her expression was calm. Murphy paced behind his desk like a man caught between anger and disbelief. He'd made recruits cry, scream, quit. But this was something else. "Sit down." His voice was lower than usual. "I prefer to stand, drill sergeant." That wasn't a request. She sat. He dropped a thick folder on the desk, her name across the tab in block letters. "I've been doing some research on you." Sarah didn't move, didn't blink. Murphy pulled out a photograph, the same one she'd shown the recruiter weeks ago, but this copy was clearer, details sharper, targets in the background riddled with holes so impossibly tight they looked like a single shot. "Your grandfather," Murphy said. "Marine, Korean War, most of his service record, classified, redacted. Buried so deep it screams one thing: he did things this country doesn't want people to know about." Sarah felt her chest tighten. He knew, or at least enough to be dangerous. Murphy leaned forward, voice softer now. "Some of my friends remember a name, a sniper who could move like smoke, make shots that shouldn't exist. They called him Ghost Walker." Silence, just the hum of the air conditioner. "What did he teach you, and why teach it to a little girl?" Sarah stared at the photograph. Her mind drifted, back to Oregon, back to the woods, back to her grandfather's hands guiding hers. "Breathe, little ghost. The rifle is an extension of your will. It doesn't miss because you don't miss. And one day, someone you love will need you to be more than you appear to be." She swallowed. "He started teaching me when I was 8, every summer, every weekend I could get away. By 12, I was hitting distances people said were impossible. He made me promise never to tell anyone, said the world wasn't ready." Murphy studied her face. For the first time, he wasn't mocking. He wasn't trying to break her. He was trying to understand. "Show me," he said suddenly. "Drill sergeant. Tomorrow night. You, me, the range, no excuses. I want to see what Ghost Walker really taught you." The next evening the range was deserted. No recruits, no instructors, just Murphy and Sarah. Targets were set far beyond the standard training distances. Some hidden, some angled, the farthest one barely visible even with binoculars, 800 yards. Murphy handed her a rifle, the M24, bolt action, no night vision, no laser rangefinder. "Just you," he said, "and whatever your grandfather put in your head." Sarah lay prone. The rifle felt familiar, closer to what she'd trained with in Oregon. She studied the terrain. Wind tugged at the grass. Humidity hung heavy in the air. The subtle things her grandfather had drilled into her. "Target 300 yards. Behind the log," she said. Murphy peered through his scope. "There's nothing behind." The rifle cracked. A metallic ping answered, hidden steel, direct hit. Murphy frowned. 500, left of the oak tree. Another shot, another hit. His breath grew shallow. 800, top of the hill. He watched through his scope this time. The bullet rang true, striking a dinner plate-sized target like it was painted with neon. "Jesus Christ," Murphy whispered. Sarah worked the bolt calmly. "There are 12 more out there you didn't see. My grandfather always said the most dangerous enemy is the one you don't know exists." For over an hour she fired. Each shot deliberate, precise. Each hit a lesson in patience, calculation, control. Murphy's world tilted with every metallic ping echoing across the range. When it was over, they walked back to the barracks in silence. Murphy, the man who had mocked her mercilessly, finally understood what he was looking at. "Tomorrow," he said finally, his voice low, almost reverent, "we start your real training. Everything up till now, kindergarten." Sarah nodded. The weight of her grandfather's legacy settled across her shoulders. "There's something else you should know, drill sergeant," she said softly. Murphy turned. "My grandfather didn't just teach me to shoot. He taught me to disappear, to move unseen, to think like the enemy, to be something they'd never expect." Her eyes met his, dark and unflinching. "He called me his little ghost." A chill ran down Murphy's spine. And for the first time in 20 years of breaking recruits, he wasn't sure if he was training a soldier or awakening something far more dangerous. Why did the bus feel so heavy? 23 men and one woman sat in silence, but the weight wasn't in their packs. It was in the glances, the whispered doubts, the unspoken verdict that she didn't belong. Sarah sat straight-backed, her rifle case on her knees, her hands folded calmly as if she were back in a library instead of on her way to the most brutal course in the Marine Corps, Scout Sniper School. The Marines around her had combat patches, deployment scars, reputations earned in fire and blood. They wore confidence like armor. She wore silence. One of them leaned toward another and muttered just loud enough, scraping the bottom of the barrel now. Another laughed, though the sound felt nervous more than cruel. Sarah didn't look at them. She kept her eyes on the window, the blur of Virginia trees passing by. She had been underestimated all her life. It no longer stung. It was fuel. At the gate they were met by a legend, Gunnery Sergeant Blake, 40 confirmed kills, holder of the Corps' longest confirmed shot. His stare alone felt like a test. "Listen up," his voice thundered. "Welcome to Scout Sniper School. Look around. Some of you won't last the week. Most of you won't last the month. We separate hunters from prey. Fail here and you'll never wear the cross rifles. You'll just go back to your units knowing you weren't enough." His gaze landed on Sarah. It lingered. She didn't flinch. The first week was designed to break them. 20-hour days, endless runs with 60-pound packs, drills that left grown men gasping. Sarah's body screamed for rest, but she remembered her grandfather's voice. "Pain is temporary, little ghost. Quitting is forever." She learned to endure, not with strength but with technique. She shifted loads carefully, controlled her breathing, focused not on the agony but on the next step, the next rise, the next hill. Whispers followed her through every march. "She's holding us back. This is why women don't belong in combat." But none of them saw her in the dark before dawn, running alone, pushing past the limit her body claimed was final. None of them saw the fire that humiliation had forged inside her. If the physical trials tested her endurance, the classroom revealed her gift. Ballistics, wind, trajectory, numbers that tangled other minds unfolded before her with startling clarity. Master Sergeant Torres barked one morning, chalk in hand. "Calculate for me. .308 round, 1,200 yards, 15-mile crosswind, 85 degrees, 60% humidity." The class froze. They knew this problem. It was brutal. Sarah closed her eyes. She could almost hear her grandfather's voice in the Oregon woods. "Read the air, feel it. The bullet isn't math, it's movement." She spoke calmly. "Elevation 32.5 minutes, windage 4.2 right, time of flight 1.6 seconds. Torres tapped his board, then checked his computer. Slowly he looked back at her. "Exactly right." The room was silent. By the end of week 2, 8 candidates had dropped out. 16 remained, all of them harder, leaner, sharper. And then came the test. The one they whispered about. The shots that separated snipers from men who merely wished they were. 5 targets, 5 distances, 5 conditions meant to break your skill, your nerve, or both. The first 300 yards clean and simple. The second 600 yards hidden behind brush with wind gusts. The third 900 moving. The fourth 1,200 perched on a steep angle. And then the fifth. The monster. 1,500 yards, nearly a mile. A shot that lived on the very edge of physics. In 15 years of the school, only 12 Marines had ever hit it. One by one, the candidates stepped up. A veteran of 3 deployments made the first 4 with grit but missed the 5th by inches. Jackson, the joker of the group, stumbled on the 4th, the angle proving too much. Who had made Sarah's life hell since day 1, failed on the 3rd, his shot so wide it was laughable. Except nobody laughed. The range was too heavy for that. Finally, it was her turn. Blake called. His tone was unreadable. She walked to the firing line. The M40A5 lay waiting, cool and heavy in her hands, familiar, a tool she could trust. The first shot, 300 yards, child's play, dead center. The second, 600. She watched the grass bend, felt the crosswind on her cheek, adjusted, dead center. The third, 900, moving target. She tracked it, her heartbeat steady, her breath calm. She squeezed, dead center. The fourth, 1200, the angle steep, the math vicious. But she'd been doing calculations since she was a child. Adjust, compensate, fire, dead center. Then the fifth. The legend. 1500 yards. She studied the hillside. The wind was treacherous, swirling in eddies that made even seasoned shooters hesitate. She closed her eyes, remembered her grandfather's whisper, "The rifle is you. You are the bullet. Feel where it needs to go." She opened her eyes. The world narrowed. One rifle, one target, one breath. The shot broke. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then the metallic ring echoed. Dead center. The range erupted in disbelief. Blake lowered his spotting scope. His jaw tightened. Pit, confirm target 5. The radio crackled. Confirm, dead center hit. Repeat, dead center. Check again. His voice was steel. Pause, then. Gunny, confirmed, perfect center. Silence, the kind of silence that rewrites reputations. Sarah cleared her weapon calmly, her face betraying nothing, as though she hadn't just done what 12 men in 15 years had failed to do. Blake walked toward her, his face unreadable. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" She looked up at him, calm, steady. "My grandfather taught me, gunnery sergeant." What was his name? But his friends called him Ghost Walker. The color drained from Blake's face. The name was legend, a ghost from the Korean mountains, a sniper whispered about in halls and barracks, credited with shots no one believed possible. Blake nodded slowly, almost reverently. "Jesus Christ, you're his granddaughter." That night, as the others congratulated her in hushed tones, Sarah felt none of the triumph they imagined. She felt only the weight, the invisible hand of her grandfather on her shoulder, the echo of his lessons, the knowledge that every shot pulled her further from the quiet life she once knew and deeper into something her grandfather had prepared her for all along. And somewhere behind the glass of an observation room, a general lowered his binoculars. He had been watching, waiting. "It's her," he said quietly into the phone. "She's everything the report promised." On the other end, another voice replied just as quietly, "Then it's time. Activate the protocol." The ghost had returned. And this time, she had her granddaughter's eyes. What do you do when the plane shakes like it wants to come apart? When the noise of the engines feels like thunder in your bones, and every vibration whispers that the next second could be your last? Sarah sat strapped into the C-130, hands resting lightly on her rifle case, steady even as the fuselage rattled and roared. Around her, Marines double-checked gear, tightened straps, swallowed nerves. Some muttered prayers. Others cursed quietly, trying to mask the fear with bravado. She didn't move, didn't fidget. She had already checked her rifle 3 times. Her spotter, Lance Corporal Davis, had teased her about it once, but not anymore. He had learned quickly that her rituals weren't about nerves. They were about control, precision, survival. 30 minutes to LZ, the crew chief shouted. The squad leader, Staff Sergeant Martinez, leaned close across the roar of the engines. "You good?" She nodded, calm, controlled. Martinez studied her a moment longer. He'd read the files. He'd heard the whispers, the librarian who turned sniper, Ghost Walker's blood. Legends were heavy things to carry, and Martinez wasn't a man who believed in legends. But looking at her steady eyes, he wondered. The mission sounded simple on paper. Extract a downed pilot from a compound, neutralize threats and bring everyone home. But the valley they were dropping into wasn't just hostile, it belonged to a ghost. For months, coalition forces had been haunted by a single sniper, a phantom who killed from impossible distances, then disappeared before air support could respond. They called him the Ghost of Helmand. 17 confirmed kills. More, they suspected. Always one shot. Always vanishing into dust and silence. The Taliban whispered his name with reverence. Americans spoke it with anger and fear. Now Sarah was flying into his hunting ground. The insertion went smoothly. Too smoothly. The helicopters set them down near the ridge line, rotor wash whipping grit into their eyes. The squad moved quickly, boots crunching on loose rock, the air sharp with dust and heat. Sarah and Davis climbed higher to establish overwatch. The others pushed toward the compound where the pilot was holed up. From her vantage, Sarah scanned the valley. Her scope moved slow, patient, deliberate. She ignored what was obvious, looked instead for what didn't belong, the shadow out of place, the movement too measured. There, she whispered finally, 11 o'clock, 800 meters, top of the wall. Davis frowned, adjusting his spotting scope. I don't see, he froze, then sucked in a breath. Holy hell, how did you? Shadow's wrong, Sarah said quietly. Depth doesn't match the wall, that's a hide. Davis stared at her. He'd been in 2 deployments. He knew how hard it was to find a well-camouflaged sniper, and she'd picked it out in seconds. Before he could answer, Martinez's voice cracked through the radio. Overwatch, we're beginning our approach. Keep us covered. The team moved across open ground. 50 meters in, the first shot cracked. The bullet struck dirt inches from Martinez's boots, spraying rock and dust. The Marines dove for cover. Sniper, sniper. Sarah's scope swept the compound. She caught the faint flash, a muzzle in the main building, 2nd floor. Target acquired, she whispered. 3rd window from the left. Range 847 meters. Davis tracked it. I've got him. She breathed slow, wind 10 miles per hour, slight cross current, heat shimmer. Her mind ran the math as naturally as counting heartbeats. Send it, Davis said. Her finger squeezed. Her heart slowed. The rifle cracked. Through the scope she saw it, the sudden stillness of a man whose life had ended mid-breath. His weapon fell. His hide went silent. Target down, Davis confirmed. Nice shot. But Sarah's eyes didn't leave the scope. Her instincts screamed, too easy, too clean. Negative, she said sharply. Something's wrong. Target down, Martinez insisted. We need to move. Sarah didn't answer. She scanned again. And then she saw it. A pile of rubble near the east wall, subtle movement, almost nothing, but enough. The real sniper, she whispered. 600 meters, rubble pile east of the compound. As she spoke, the shot came. The wall exploded inches from Martinez's head. Dust rained down. This one wasn't just good. He was lethal, precise, patient. Sarah swung her rifle, but the angle was wrong. The rubble was shielded. She had no line. I can't get him from here. Davis turned to her. Then what do you want to do? She packed her rifle, quick and deliberate. I'm moving. You'll be exposed. He'll cut you down. Not if I move like a ghost. And then she was gone. Davis blinked, trying to track her. One moment she was there beside him. The next she was part of the landscape, moving with the wind, timing each step with the gusts, using the micro-terrain like cover, flattening herself against rock, slipping through shadow. The Ghost of Helmand never saw her coming. From her new position, the rubble pile opened up in her scope. She saw him now mid-40s, bearded, wearing a Soviet-era suit. His rifle steady, his eye to the glass. He was patient, deadly. He had killed 17 men just like this. Range, 1,247 meters. Wind shifting, unpredictable. Target nearly invisible. Sarah exhaled. She thought of David, her brother, of the pilot trapped in the compound, of Martinez and the squad pinned down, lives balanced on a trigger pull. Her grandfather's voice whispered, "Sometimes, little ghost, you must become the thing your enemy fears most." Her heartbeat slowed. Her finger tightened. The rifle cracked. Seconds stretched. Then the man slumped, his weapon sliding from his hands. "Target eliminated," she said quietly. The ghost of Helmand would never fire again. The rescue moved fast after that. The squad breached, secured the pilot, extracted. The valley that had swallowed 3 rescue attempts before gave them up at last. On the ride out, dust still in their hair, adrenaline fatting, Davis stared at her. "You just killed a ghost," he said. His voice was part awe, part disbelief. Sarah looked out the window at the endless Afghan hills. She felt no triumph, only the echo of her grandfather's lessons, heavy and familiar. This wasn't the end, it was only the beginning. And far away, in a secure office half a world distant, a 4-star general set down a classified report. His lips curved into the faintest smile. "She's ready," he said. "It's time to tell her the truth." The ghost of Helmand was gone. But a new ghost had just been born. Why did the metal feel heavier than her rifle? It gleamed against the dark blue of her dress uniform, the Navy cross hanging where the world could see it, but Sarah felt only its weight. Not pride, not triumph. Weight. The parade ground it shimmered with October sunlight. Golden leaves drifted across the grass, carried by a wind that felt too gentle for the words being spoken. For extraordinary heroism in connection with military operations against an armed enemy. General's voice carried across the assembly, clear and commanding. He spoke of courage under fire, of tactical brilliance, of a sniper who had saved 7 Marines and silenced one of the Taliban's most dangerous weapons. Sarah heard none of it. She stood at attention, her bearing perfect, her gaze forward. Inside, her mind was far away, on a dusty Afghan valley, on the downed pilot's haunted eyes, on the still body of a man they had called the ghost of Helmand. Her parents were in the front row. Her mother dabbed at tears with a tissue. Her father stood rigid, as though finally understanding why his own father had spent so many hours in the woods with Sarah, teaching her things he had never explained. The medal was pinned, the applause swelled, cameras flashed. To the crowd, she was a hero. To herself, she was simply carrying a legacy she had never asked for. As the ceremony ended, officers and families clustered into groups, handshakes, congratulations, posed photos for base newsletters. Sarah stepped aside, grateful for the distance. That was when she saw him. A man apart from the others. 4 stars on his shoulder. Hair steel gray, eyes harder than stone. He waited until her family drifted away before approaching. His movements were measured, deliberate. Other Marines gave him wide berth, their faces tightening in respect tinged with something else, fear. Lance Corporal, his voice was quiet but carried authority like a blade. "I'm General Harrison. We need to talk." Sarah straightened instinctively. "Yes, sir." "Walk with me." They moved away from the parade ground, down a shaded path that led toward buildings Sarah didn't recognize. Harrison walked at a steady pace, his hands clasped behind his back. "Tell me about your grandfather," he said without preamble. The question caught her off guard. "Korean War veteran, he." "Ghost Walker," Harrison interrupted. Sarah stopped. Her blood turned cold. That name was supposed to be buried in redacted files. Whispers, nothing more. "How do you know that designation, sir?" Harrison turned to face her. His eyes were grave, his voice steady. "Because I was there when he earned it." Sarah stared. That was impossible. "Sir, with respect, you'd have to be." 92? No, I'm 78. I was 19 when I met him. Second Lieutenant, Reservoir, November 1950. We were surrounded. outnumbered, freezing to death. The Chinese had snipers on them and they were cutting us apart. His eyes drifted as if he could still see the snow, the blood, the chaos. Your grandfather volunteered for a suicide mission. He disappeared into the blizzard. In 18 hours, 23 enemy snipers were dead. He opened a corridor that saved 800 Marines. Sarah's throat tightened. Her grandfather had never spoken of it, not like this. Just vague mentions of cold, of hardship, never of ghosts in the snow. That's why we called him Ghost Walker, Harrison said softly. Not just because of his shots, because he vanished. 3 days, no contact. Then he reappeared behind enemy lines with intelligence that broke their defenses. They had reached a building now, heavy steel doors, warnings about classified access. Harrison pressed his hand to a biometric scanner. The lock clicked open. "Come," he said. Inside was not an office. It was something between a museum and a vault. The air smelled faintly of oil and paper, walls lined with photographs, files, faded uniforms. At the center, a display case. Inside, an M1903 Springfield rifle. Her grandfather's rifle. Sarah's knees weakened. Her hands trembled before she clenched them into fists. "He taught me on that rifle," she whispered. Harrison joined her at the case. "We tried to nominate him for the Medal of Honor, but when the paperwork reached Washington, something strange happened. His records collapsed. Marine sniper didn't exist. His background was fabricated. His identity classified above our clearance. He was part of something older, something that officially never existed." He led her to another case. Documents so redacted they were almost black pages. OSS, the words faintly visible at the top. During World War II, the OSS, precursor to the CIA, recruited exceptional individuals. People with skills too rare to waste in conventional war. Your grandfather was one, inserted into Japanese-occupied territory under a cover identity. After the war, he was remade as a Marine. Korea was his second life. Sarah tried to breathe, but the air felt thin. "Why are you telling me this?" Harrison looked at her, his expression softer now, almost sad. "Because we've been watching you since the day he first took you shooting. He made us promise something before he died, that if you ever chose the path of a soldier, we would give you every chance to reach your full potential, but never force it. The choice had to be yours." Her mind spun. Memories of the recruitment office, Murphy's relentless pressure, sniper school. Was any of it coincidence, or had every step been guided by invisible hands? "You're saying all of it was arranged." "Arranged, yes, but not guaranteed. You had to earn it, and you did, in ways none of us expected." Sarah turned back to the rifle in the case. She saw herself as a child again, her grandfather's weathered hand steadying hers, his voice whispering, "One day, you'll understand why." Her chest tightened. She had wanted answers. She wasn't sure she wanted these. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. Harrison moved to a wall map dotted with red markers across the globe. "There are threats rising that conventional forces can't touch. Enemies who live in shadows, who use our rules against us. We need someone who can think like they do. Someone who can be more than a soldier." "You want me to be like my grandfather?" "I want you to be you, but with the knowledge of who he was and what that makes you capable of." Sarah closed her eyes. She felt the weight of her grandfather's legacy like a cloak settling over her shoulders, heavy, familiar, inevitable. When she opened them again, her voice was steady. "What's the first mission?" For the first time, Harrison smiled. Not the cold smile of a general, but the faint echo of a 19-year-old lieutenant who had once been saved in the snow by a ghost with a rifle. "Welcome to the program, Agent," he said. "Your grandfather would be proud." That night, alone in her quarters, Sarah stared at the Navy Cross on her desk. The medal gleamed in the lamplight, but she no longer saw it as an award. It was a key, a marker, proof that she had crossed a threshold she could never uncross. She could almost hear her grandfather's whisper again. "Now you understand, little ghost. This is why I taught you to disappear." The librarian was gone. The Marine sniper was gone. What remained was something the world hadn't seen in 70 years. The ghost's bloodline. Awaken. What happens to a soldier who no longer exists? What do you call a woman erased from every record, every roster, every database? Sarah stared at the discharge papers on the desk, at the stamp that read, "Honorably separated," at the empty line where her name should have been written, black ink covered with redaction tape. It was official. Lance Corporal had never served. Her medals, her citations, her years of sweat and blood gone with a keystroke. The world thought she had returned home, a librarian again, a civilian, a nobody. But the truth lay behind the steel doors she now walked through, doors that sealed shut like vaults, doors that swallowed names and spat out ghosts. The training was nothing like. It was quieter, deadlier. She learned to break into rooms without leaving a mark, to slip past cameras and sensors without tripping alarms, to vanish into a city crowd without a single witness remembering her face. Languages, culture, psychology, how to plant fear with a glance, how to extract trust with a smile. Not just how to kill, how to decide who must live. It wasn't the discipline of the Marine Corps anymore. This was something older, something darker. Her body hardened, her mind sharpened, but each night she asked herself a single question: was this what her grandfather wanted for her? Or had she been forged into something even he hadn't foreseen? The final exam wasn't written on paper, it was written in blood. One evening, General Harrison summoned her to his office. The room was dim, the desk empty except for a single photograph. A man in his 50s, civilian suit, smiling in a way that felt wrong, like the smile had been practiced in a mirror. "His name is," Harrison said, "X, now a broker, weapons intelligence people. He thinks he's untouchable in Warsaw. He's wrong. Tomorrow night you'll prove it." Sarah studied the photograph. The file listed crimes: arms trafficking, assassinations, child soldiers recruited for militias. She felt her stomach tighten. "You want me to eliminate him?" Harrison didn't blink. "No, I want you to erase him clean, no noise, no trace. He disappears and the world keeps spinning. This isn't war anymore, this is shadow." Warsaw in winter smelled of smoke and rain. The city lights reflected on wet cobblestones, the streets alive with tourists who never looked too closely at the quiet corners. Sarah walked with the crowd, her hair hidden under a knit cap, her coat plain. She could have been anyone. That was the point. His penthouse overlooked the Vistula River, cameras on every corner, guards in the lobby, a doorman who checked IDs twice. But Sarah didn't use the lobby. She slipped through the service entrance with a delivery cart, climbed 3 flights of stairs, and vanished into the ductwork. Her breath slowed as she moved through narrow metal tunnels. She counted turns, memorized the rhythm of the guard rotations below. Her grandfather had taught her patience. Now she used it like a blade. When she reached the vent above his office, she froze, waited, listened. The man was laughing. His voice was harsh, grating, speaking Russian into a phone. Deals, weapons, death. She slid the vent open silently, lowered herself like a shadow, feet touching carpet without a sound. The pistol was steady in her hand, suppressor already fixed. One step closer. Her breath shallow. Her heartbeat calm. She raised the weapon. And then she saw the photo on his desk. A boy, 12, maybe 13, smiling, holding a soccer ball. Her finger froze. For a split second she saw herself at that age. A child with a rifle in the Oregon woods, taught to breathe, to shoot, to disappear. A child shaped by choices she hadn't made. Her chest tightened. Could she do this? Could she kill a man who had a son who smiled that way? Her grandfather's whisper came back. The rifle is not about taking life, it's about saving it. Ask yourself, little ghost, who are you saving? Barked another laugh, his words venomous. 10 crates of rifles for Syria, another shipment for Yemen. Children make excellent soldiers if trained young. Sarah's jaw clenched. The boy in the photo was already a tool to him, already a lie. She exhaled. The trigger broke. The room fell silent. Would never sell death again. By dawn she was gone. No cameras, no evidence. Just a body slumped over a desk, a glass of vodka spilled across papers stained red. The world kept spinning. Back at the facility, Harrison studied her face as she reported. No mistakes. None. No traces. None. He nodded. His expression gave nothing away, but in his eyes, for just a heartbeat, she saw it, respect. You've crossed the line, he said quietly, from soldier to ghost, and ghosts don't go back. That night, alone, Sarah sat on her bunk staring at her reflection in the steel mirror. She didn't see the librarian anymore, or the Marine. She saw someone else, someone her grandfather had prepared but never named. She whispered to herself, barely audible. I'm not just his granddaughter, I'm what he left behind. For the first time she understood the true cost of being unseen, the silence, the solitude, the life she could never share with her mother, her father, her brother. Her dignity would not speak. It would only act. And far away, in another city, another man studied the file that had crossed his desk overnight. He murmured, the new ghost. His lips curved into a smile that carried no warmth. Let's see how far she'll go. Why was she shaking now when she hadn't trembled in battle? Not from fear, not from doubt, from something else, something heavier than war. The dossier lay on the table, thick, redacted, stamped with clearances above her rank, above her world. Inside was a face. Older, weathered. The man her mission demanded she kill. Wraith. Once a Cold War operative. Now a broker of secrets, shifting power in silence, keeping nations on a knife's edge. Sarah traced the photograph with her fingertip. The lines of his face. The eyes that seemed to stare back at her even through ink and gloss. Her grandfather's age, she thought. And then the words in the margin hit her like a round to the chest. Known associate of Ghost Walker. Her grandfather. She closed the file slowly, her breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just a mission. This was a reckoning. The city was Berlin. Cold gray, watching. Sarah moved through its streets like any other traveler, her coat blending into the tide of commuters. Her rifle broken down in a violin case, the irony not lost on her. Music of another kind. She knew the Wraith's routine. He emerged at 1900 hours sharp, crossing near the Brandenburg Gate, flanked by quiet protection. Men who blended as tourists but moved like wolves. Her perch was 3 stories up in an abandoned apartment, the plaster peeling, the air thick with dust. She assembled the rifle piece by piece, her hands steady, her heartbeat calm. When the scope clicked into place, she exhaled. The world narrowed. One man, one square, one mission. Through the glass she found him, the Wraith, older than the photo, his gait slower but his eyes alert. This was no careless man. He had lived too long in shadows for that. She lined the crosshairs to his chest. Her finger touched the trigger. And then he looked up. Not at her, not through glass, but toward the sky, as though some instinct, some ghost of awareness had brushed against him. In that fraction of a second, Sarah's chest tightened, because she had seen that look before. In her grandfather's eyes. The Wraith stopped, adjusted his scarf. For a heartbeat, Sarah swore he was searching for something or someone. And then, impossibly, he turned his head just slightly. And for one breathless instant, their eyes met through glass and distance and shadow. She froze. The radio crackled in her ear, Harrison's voice. "Take the shot now." Her finger tightened, but the whisper of her grandfather returned. "The rifle is not about taking life, it's about saving it." Save who, she didn't know. The man in her scope was enemy, traitor, killer, but also something more, something her grandfather had never spoken of. "Confirm shot." She didn't answer. Her breath came slow, deliberate. The Wraith adjusted his coat, moving forward, unaware that his life was balanced on a single decision in a forgotten room above him. And then softly the Wraith did something no file could have predicted. He paused, reached into his pocket, took out a small, folded piece of paper. He pressed it into the hand of a child who had been begging near the square. A note and money. The child looked up, startled, then ran. Sarah's heart twisted. The Wraith had seen her, not her face, not her scope, but something. He had known what ghosts felt like. "This is your final warning, take the shot." Her grandfather's voice. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. She lowered the rifle. The silence in her ear was heavier than any gunfire. Then Harrison's voice, steel wrapped in fury. "You disobeyed a direct order." Sarah kept her eyes on the Wraith. He was gone now, swallowed by the crowd, his shadow slipping back into the labyrinth of Berlin. "No," she said softly, "I made a choice." The extraction was cold, wordless, her equipment confiscated, her escort silent. By the time she reached she already knew. She was done, not as a ghost, not as a Marine. Done with programs, orders, chains she could no longer trust. Harrison didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He only looked at her for a long, heavy silence. "You had him," he said finally. "History in your scope, and you let him walk." Sarah met his gaze, calm, steady. "My grandfather taught me how to shoot, but more than that, he taught me when not to." Harrison's jaw tightened. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," she whispered, "but regret is human, ghosts don't feel it." She left the program the way she entered it, in silence. No records, no trace. To the world, Sarah had vanished. But she hadn't disappeared into nothing. She returned to the one place that still felt real, the Oregon woods where it began, where her grandfather's lessons echoed through pine and silence. She trained there alone, walked the old paths, fired the old rifle from distances no one believed possible, not for war, not for orders, for herself. Her dignity didn't need applause. It didn't need medals. It didn't need files or generals or missions. It needed silence and truth. Years later, whispers would drift through barracks and war rooms of a woman who had once outshot every Marine in, who had faced the ghost of Helmand and won, who had been recruited into shadows, then vanished when she refused to become their weapon. Some called her a deserter, some called her a legend. But those who had looked through a scope and seen her work, they called her something else. The new ghost. On a quiet ridge at dusk, Sarah packed away her rifle. The sun bled into the horizon, the trees black against gold. She breathed deep, steady, calm. Somewhere out there, men like Harrison would still whisper her name in anger. Somewhere out there, enemies would tell stories of a phantom woman who walked unseen. But here, in the silence, she felt something none of them would ever understand. Peace. Because sometimes, the greatest victories aren't in the shots you take. They're in the ones you refuse. And when the last light faded, Sarah whispered the words that had carried her from the library to the battlefield, from the Marine Corps to the shadows, from fear to freedom. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. The wind carried her voice away, and the forest swallowed the ghost once more.